investigative wholehearted devotion of all acts, an explanation of the multifaceted obligation that all our acts be wholly devoted to God's name, and that we avoid affection. Having preceded this gate with a discussion of trust of God, may He be exalted, I think it proper to follow with an explanation of the multifaceted obligation that all religious acts be wholly devoted to God alone. For this refines the inner life and purifies the heart of foreign elements that would ruin these acts, and saves one from various forms of ingration, which leads to affection and flattery of others, as Elihu said, "Let me not be partial to any man, or be timid in speaking to another person, for I do not know how to speak timidly." It is now fitting to explain the following 6 aspects of wholehearted devotion of acts to God. The first is what constitutes wholehearted devotion of acts to God. The second is how is it achieved. The third is to which acts does this obligation apply. The fourth is what kind of things inhibit it. The fifth is how can these inhibiting factors be removed so that each act that one performs may be wholly devoted to God's name. The sixth is how one should be careful of his thought, on guard against it, and in control of it. 1. What constitutes wholehearted devotion of acts to God? It is the intention, in public and private acts of worship, for the sake of His name, to do His will alone, and not to win favor of human beings. 2. How is wholehearted devotion of acts to God attained? By virtue of 10 attributes. If a person internalizes them and comprehends truly that they are the foundations of his worship and the roots of his works, then his devotion of acts to God's name will be complete. He will turn to no one else, rely on no one beside him, and the sole aim of his works will be to please Him. The first is wholeheartedly acknowledging God's unity, as explained at the beginning of this book. The second is reflecting on God's graces, which are continually bestowed upon us, as we have explained. The third is assuming the service of God, as I have also mentioned. The fourth is embracing reliance on Him, and not on human beings. The fifth is believing that it is not within the power of any created being to help or harm without the permission of the Creator. The sixth is indifference to people's praise or insult. The seventh is refraining from carrying favor with other people. The eighth is clearing one's heart of worldly matters when working for the world to come. The ninth is being in awe of God and diffident before Him. The 10th is consulting the intellect whenever evil thoughts enter the heart, and accepting the counsel of the intellect rather than that of one's base instincts. 3. The acts that, to be perfected, must be wholly devoted to God when they are performed are the acts of worship through which we hope to gain God's favor, namely, all the observable duties performed with the limbs. In these, one's aim in doing them might be something other than for the sake of God. One's aim might be to adorn himself with them before people and to be honored and praised by people for having performed them. It is impossible, however, to carry favor or gain honor and praise by fulfilling any of the duties of the heart, because people do not know what is in one's heart. Rather, one intends them for the sake of the one who observes, namely the Creator alone. As it says, I, God, search the heart and test the mind. The hidden things belong to Hashem, our God. 4. There are 3 things which inhibit the wholehearted devotion of acts to God. The first is failure to understand God and His graces. The second is failure to understand God's commandments and teachings. And the third is the temptation of man's evil inclination and its suggestions to him, pointing to what will attract him to this world and deter him from the path of the world to come. Deficiency in the knowledge of God inhibits the practice of His service for the following reason. Whoever does not know his master will not serve him in his heart. Who will serve him? Only one who knows his power, who is certain that he can help or harm. Even if someone who has no knowledge of God performs one of the acts of service, his aim in doing so is that of one who fears or places his hope in man alone. He serves man, not man's Creator, because he does not know God or appreciate his nature. The same is true of the idolater. What brings him to idolatry is his lack of knowledge of God. May he be exalted. The idolater, however, is superior to the pretentious poser in 4 respects. The first is, in our time, when there is no prophecy, the idolater is not warned by the prophet, who, through signs and wonders, can prove to him the fallacy of his ideas. But one who poses in his observance of God's Torah is open to the charge that he acts in this fashion after having received the commandment to serve God, and the prohibition not to serve anyone beside him. The second is, the idolater worships that which does not disobey God. But one who poses in the observance of God's Torah worships human beings who disobey God, as well as those who do not disobey him. The third is, the idolater serves one thing only, but there is no end to those whom the poser serves. The fourth is, the idolater's nature is not hidden from people. They can be wary of him, for his denial of God is public. The poser's denial, however, is not apparent. People trust him, and so he can harm them in ways that the idolater cannot. He is the worst of the world's afflictions, and is described as pretentious, treacherous, and misleading. If one does not know God's commandments and teachings, his religious practice cannot be wholly devoted to God. For if he does not know the modes of worship, as prescribed in the basic laws, he certainly will not know how to perform them perfectly, with wholehearted devotion to God. Any religious act that he performs is for the sake of something other than God, for he is like one who doubts the true nature of his obligation to perform these acts, as he has no knowledge of what obligated him to wholeheartedly devote his actions to God. As our masters of blessed memory said, an ignorant person cannot fear sin, nor can an unlearned person be pious. The temptation of the evil inclination falls into 2 categories: thoughts that create doubt about true notions and corrupt one's faith, so that he cannot perform any religious act properly, and objections and arguments which maintain that what he so eagerly seeks to attain, the devotion of acts to God, is neither obligatory nor exemplary. The evil inclination rather encourages him to work for this world and its inhabitants,